Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Adventures in Messaging. I'm Emma Stratton, and today I'm super excited to be joined by April Rassa, Senior Director of Product Marketing, Comms, and Content at HackerOne. Hey, April.
Hi, Emma. Great to be here.
It is awesome to have you. I'm so excited to dive in. I've got some big, juicy things I'd like to talk about with you. I talk to a lot of product marketers, and one of the things that comes up again and again is they say, I've got a product, we've got a vision. It's a couple, maybe a few years down the road, but this is where we want to go. This is where the product is today. This is what customers think about us today. How do we really bridge that gap and help customers see where we're trying to take them?
Hmm.
And I hear this a lot. And I hear that you actually have a framework to help solve for this, April.
I do, Emma. I do, and I'd love to share it. So I,
Yes.
I think, as product marketers, we're always in this position of kind of, dealing with what is currently on the track, and then how do we sort of paint the broader vision for buyers and for prospects. And I call this notion of sort of taking what is versus what could be framework for creating, really contrast in the way you tell stories. And this framework forces you to create contrast to craft a really captivating narrative. So I'll give an example, but first let me kind of describe it. So first it's describe the reality of like what it is today, and then describe the potential future, like what could it be? And then the audience or the buyer will want to learn more, right? They'll want to understand why the world is not the way it could be. And then you're really sort of, they become more invested in that potential future because it's so different from really sort of the reality that you've portrayed. So I'll give you a little snapshot. So I used to work at a startup that was really focused on creating a document repository for a very highly specialized vertical market. So it was really around like oil and gas and manufacturing, where things were pretty bespoke, pretty manual. And so, marketing a yet another document repository in, 2021 is not probably the most exciting thing to be doing. So what was the sort of the North Star? Where did we want to take our customers? It was really around kind of automating their workflow at the end of the day. It's not only like where you house things, but it's how do you take the manual, bespoke, paper-ridden things that you were doing on the factory floor and really automating that entire end-to-end workflow. That's a completely different story than coming in and saying, we have a document repository, you can put everything in there. So that was really sort of the genesis for kind of coming up with this framework of like, this is where we are today, this is how we can solve your problem, and then mapping it to really sort of the North Star of where we want to take the product. So it's just a good sort of cheat sheet to kind of consider as you're thinking about your messaging.
Yeah, that's really good and helpful. I love this idea of contrast to really kind of darken that divide between,
Mhm.
where they could go and where they are today. So if you have these two sides, the what could be and the what is today, how do you sort of balance them in kind of your messaging strategy, for example? Is it kind of connecting the two together? Yeah, how do you think about those two parts?
Yeah, it definitely is. I think the reality is you kind of get to the nuts and bolts of what is it that I currently have. So really the capabilities and the opportunities that you can offer today, and then mapping those with, okay, if you have these opportunities, then how does it actually make it a broader pie when I think about, the broader story that you want to map to customers. So really taking those capabilities and seeing if you can augment them to, okay, what would, the next 6 to 9 months kind of look like in the future as you start to paint that broader picture for the buyer.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so what, is that, how do you really get into, how do you sort of inspire that vision of what the future looks like? Do you do any kind of exercises? Do you do kind of group brainstorming? Do you put yourself in the shoes of the customer? Do you do any kind of creative exercises to kind of paint that vision and make it inspiring?
Yeah, I mean, I think the example that I gave, it took a long time for us to kind of get to from point A to point B. It was,
Right,
at the beginning, it was very much focused on how do we get this thing out into the marketplace.
right.
But this thing was okay. It wasn't really exciting. And so it was kind of like, okay, let's brainstorm and think about all of the different user stories that we gather through our interviews with our customers. what were the pain points that they were dealing with? What were the sort of the aha moments that came out of those interviews? And it took a lot of, working with our product team and our product designers to kind of sketch out sort of what are the key words that were coming out of those interviews and what were the sort of the consonants that really sort of resonated with us. And it started to come out in terms of like automation, bespoke, manual, and it's like workflow, ease of use. And it's like, okay, there's something here. So let's start to connect some of these dots together beyond just where we house things and how can we actually make it better. So it took a while, and then coming up with tangible sort of keywords and connecting those into value props.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing when a new positioning sort of emerges,
Yes,
from reality,
it really is.
it's like, wow, so that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that story.
Sure.
So I love that you've got some great advice. You've got so much experience under your belt. So let's talk about other hard stuff. I mean, what are some other challenges that PMMs are facing when it comes to messaging and positioning?
We're all, we work in organizations, or maybe we're on our own, and there are a lot of competitive pressures that are happening where a lot of times product teams and development teams are, need to release products or capabilities out in the marketplace that are maybe not quite that MVP that, the product managers or the product marketing folks really want to hone in on. And so that can create challenges, right? When it comes to developing really strong messaging, because at the end of the day, if you don't have, tangible things that you can actually market in the marketplace, it makes it tough. And I think every great messaging begins with, the core roots and going back to those core roots, which is, who is this for? So who's the audience we're building it? What's the story we want to be telling that audience? And then how do we actually deliver it? So what are their pain points? How are you going to address it? Meaning, what is your unique value proposition or point of view on that problem? And then why does it matter? So really decouple the fact that this thing isn't ready yet for the marketplace because only you and the team know that, but the marketplace doesn't know that, right? And then really sort of hone in on the core roots that you already know make a really good messaging, which is the things that I just mentioned. And I think it's important for product managers and product marketing folks that are working together to take a product to market to really recognize that, right? A lot of times maybe PMs are a little bit more ambitious to say, yeah, it's ready, like, let's take it out there. And then the product marketing folks are like, well, I don't think there is. And this might be a good way to kind of balance it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really interesting point that there's an emotional, and I've spoken to product marketers to say, like, sometimes you just get like some specs and some information and you're like, I have to come up with messaging for this. And that would make me panic, I think. But you're right. It's like the market doesn't know. And there's a lot you already know, foundational knowledge, and the basics, right? This is what you've been trained to do. And so it's just go back to the basics and take that approach and put your best foot forward, right? I think
Totally.
Day,
yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest work there is really to work with the teams internally to find what is that unique point of view on the problem statement that you can bring to the marketplace. If you can really hone in on that, then I think the rest will fall into place.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you that's a great thing to focus on. Okay, April. So I would love to get some advice from you, some advice to share with some of our viewers, advice you would give your younger self about, stepping into a marketing career.
Okay, so in chaos, I think there is opportunity.
Yes.
So when you look at your career, and most career accelerations happen when you step into a mess, and then you can make that difference.
Wow. I love that, because a lot of times you just see the mess, right? And the chaos.
Yes. Yes.
But that's when you can really make a real leap forward.
And just keep reminding yourself that you can definitely make a difference. Yes, for sure.
Awesome. Every day. Don't forget
Every day. Exactly.
Make it your mantra. Awesome, April. That was so good. I love that. That's quotable. Definitely, I will quote you on that. That is a really, really good one. It's been a pleasure meeting you and chatting with you.
Emma. Likewise, for sure. Thanks. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.